Okay. All right. Eastern Outdoors Media, Facebook Live, Tuesday Night Live. We're getting it started, kicking it off. John Allen's joining us, Josh Jenkins. What's up, guys? How's it going?
Good, man. Good. I just got the notification on my phone, so we're rolling, dude.
Awesome.
Rolling.
Dude, I've been fired up. It's been a tough season so far. I know you guys have been swamped and busy at work. And hey, Jimmy, how's it going, buddy?
What's up, brother?
Thanks for joining us again, as always, my friend. I'll tell you what, it's been an interesting turkey season. I think a lot of people have had an interesting season. A lot of what we're seeing out there right now is people are talking about lack of gobbling. Not much gobbling. It's been very difficult to get on birds and find birds. That's something that we're going to talk a little bit about today. I think this week, a lot of guys have experienced, a lot of hunters have experienced henned up gobblers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about some calling techniques, some different calls to use, why we're hunting henned up gobblers. I think that's a good thing we can talk about.
Yep.
One of those things that we can jump into is just what we're experiencing as hunters. And I want all the comments. We'll be asking comments like crazy just to see what everybody's experiencing halfway through the turkey season. But I'm fired up. I love it. We're halfway through. John Allen, I know you've been back from work recently, and you've gotten to go out a couple times. What are you experiencing out there?
Man, it's been tough for me. I've only gone out twice. Public land, Western Kentucky, both times. First time I covered about 3 miles. The second time about 5 miles. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get out early. So we're talking, I'm starting around 9:30, 10. So, maybe not the most active time to hear gobbles in general. But I covered areas where I have killed turkeys and I have heard gobbles pretty consistently the last few years. I didn't hear a single gobble. And I'm trying everything. I'm hitting a box call. I'm hitting a diaphragm. I'm hitting ceramic slate call. And I've got nothing. Now, I have seen some fresh tracks. So I know there are some turkeys there.
Yeah.
But the area where I killed a nice tom 2 years ago, I had 5 turkeys gobbling that opening morning, all within 500 yards.
Yeah.
What time of the day did you go then?
That was opening morning at sunrise.
You think that played a big deal on when you went recently? You think that played a big?
I think it was a factor, but I'm also that same area I went to this year. There, I didn't see a single turkey track, and there was a lot of fresh rain, muddy area where if there had been turkeys in there, I would have seen them. And I did not see one. And 2 years ago, they were covered up with turkey tracks.
Yeah.
So something's going on. Something's going on different, at least in the areas that I'm hunting. I don't know. What are you guys experiencing?
Yeah, it's first of all, I like that you've mentioned hunting in that later morning time. I think there's something to that, and especially this year. I think that time frame is a big deal this year, the way the season's gone, and we'll definitely get into that. I wanted to mention Colton. Thanks for joining us, bud. Bobby Webster, appreciate you. Good evening, buddy. John, hey man, we miss you, buddy. I know we'll see you soon. Jimmy, hope all is well. You too, my friend. PK, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, PK's been killing some birds now.
Yes, he has. He's on.
Laying them down.
He's on
them down.
Hey, he's been eating them already too.
Yeah, he has. They look delicious.
That's the best part. I don't care what anybody says. I know turkey season's a ton of fun. There's nothing like chasing birds, but dude, there's nothing that tastes better than wild turkey and morels. It's my favorite meal. That and some poke salad. My God.
Yeah.
That's eating right there.
Yeah. If you're not following, I will say if anybody on here is not friends with PK on Facebook, you need to look him up and friend him because he makes some awesome meals, really out of any of the wild game that he comes across. We could definitely learn a thing or two of field to fork with PK. That's for sure. So
meat eater ought to hire that guy, man.
Oh, I know, man. I tell you,
he'd be a subject matter expert on all things cooking wild game for them.
Yeah, exactly.
He does it, man. I was talking about poke salad. I know before we've asked, I would assume most people have probably tried turkey and morels in here. Who in here is a big comment if you're like a big poke salad guy? Yeah, let us know who here has been picking. I don't even know. Should it be? I assume it should be up by now, right?
I think so. I think so. If not, it's got to be soon.
If it's not, let us know. Are you seeing poke salad, and who's been eating it? If it has, I want to know.
Tim, they are tight-lipped, my friend. We're going to kind of talk about that today and just talk about some different things that we've seen. John, you were asking kind of how things have been going for us. It has been a weird season. We've my family and I have been able to harvest a few birds on our farm in Grant County, Kentucky. I was able to get one opening day, and it was a deer hunt essentially. I was sitting and waiting. I didn't have anything early, gobbling close early on. Had a few birds that were in the vicinity that were gobbling decent, but nothing super close. So I decided to get in a strut zone and wait. I put a couple decoys out. I put an Avian X half strut Jake and a Avian X lookout hen out there in the field. And something that worked for me is right around that 9 o'clock hour. And every once in a while, when they would gobble off the distance, I would answer with a call.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go crazy with it. And then later on in the morning, I ended up getting some box calls out, calling, doing a few sequences, and I'd call every 30 to 40 minutes. And around 9 o'clock, I had a bird come in, just all of a sudden fire up in the woods directly behind me. And then I heard drumming and spitting. Then he comes balled up right into the field, drumming and spitting, went right to the decoy, and I gave him a dirt nap. But
so do you think he was coming in because of your calling? Or would you think he was already coming to that field because he wanted to feed as a green field, insects and stuff like that?
Yeah, I fully believe he came in there because I had been calling over there throughout the morning some. And the reason I believe that is because where the bird started that morning was a little further away. And throughout the morning, as he would kind of get to certain points, he would gobble once or twice at a call that I put out, and he would sound closer each time.
Okay.
And then eventually he left a ridge. He left a ridge, went through a valley, came up that valley and on the top of my ridge behind me, and then popped out into the field. And I can tell you that I have sort of figured that spot out, and I'm fortunate enough to have a private land spot where I can kind of start getting used to where the patterns of animals and things of that nature. It's a little bit more a situation. I don't want to say it's easy because hunting's never easy, but
right.
You can learn the behaviors of animals on a private property where it's on public land. It's a little bit more difficult, of course.
A little bit, yeah.
But that spot has been notorious for birds to leave ridges around me, and they eventually come up. But it's because that I told them, I was a hen, and I told them that I was there. So I think that was a situation where
did he gobble every time? Every time you hit the call, did he gobble?
Not every time, but often.
Okay.
Often. It wasn't every time, but it was often enough to where it's like, oh my goodness, I think that bird's pretty fired up. But he was on another property. It was a property I didn't have permission to be on. And he just ended up coming in, and it's one of those things where I just kind of sat there until something happened, and it ended up happening. And I've seen and heard a lot of people say they've had to deer hunt them, or they've had to be patient. They've heard no gobbling in the morning, so they go sit down and kind of hit some calls here and there, and a bird will show up completely silent. That's been this past week specifically, and I'd love to see some comments here. And we're getting ready to catch up on some comments here in just a second.
That's what I was about to say. Let me scroll up here. Tim Fannin, he said, love Polk. It's in the Young State. Appreciate that, Tim. Milton Mahan, I hope I'm saying that right. Killed a bird 2 days ago.
Congrats.
Sat on it for 2 hours, worked the hen to me, and he came right behind her.
Love that.
I've had that happen several times to me. I've never actually had success. I call the hen to me. She comes in, checks it out, and then she leaves, and the gobbler goes right with her. It never fails.
Yeah.
Facebook user, guys, I'm not sure. I know John was talking about the other day. If you're watching through our group, for some reason it shows up as Facebook user. Been tough here in Owen County for me. We have tons of Jakes, and I think that's keeping the Longbeards quiet. Just got back from Missouri an hour ago, and it's the same there. So I read that comment a while ago. If you're watching, me, John Allen, and Mike here, we're all from Kentucky. Me and John Allen's out in Western Kentucky. Mike's in Northern Kentucky, and then John, that's usually with us, is from Central Kentucky. And I think it's been kind of common. It's, you know, you always hear it every year, but this year specifically, and I've been working so much, I've not been really able to get in the woods, but it seems like everyone is saying, you know, the goblin is far and in between. Like, it's not, there's not a lot of gobbling going on. So if you're listening out of state, let us know where you're listening from, where you're watching from,
Yep.
and what's your all's reports on gobbling. Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Because it seems like it's trending. It really does. All across the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
He's saying it's the same thing in Missouri. So whether it maybe you went out of state to hunt, what are you all hearing around Kentucky and the states outside of Kentucky? I assume for Mike and John Allen, it's kind of the same way for you guys. Wasn't Goblin's been kind of.
And I'm curious to know, Josh, are people not only hearing maybe less gobbling, but less number of gobblers? Because that's the thing that I'm seeing is I was seeing multiple gobblers responding where now I'm not hearing any gobblers or one gobbler off in the distance.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if that's what, you know, from a numbers perspective. I know that's anecdotal, meaning, you know, my experience only.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a statistic that I can give hard science based on the study, but it seems to be a trend that other people are talking about. I'm curious for the people listening if they've also experienced something like that.
So you're saying you think that maybe it isn't just gobbling, that bird numbers might be a little.
Well, I'm trying to figure it out. Is
right.
Is the problem that for whatever weather conditions or weather patterns or whatever, turkeys aren't gobbling as much, you know, early season and they're going to gobble more later? Or is it just that there's less turkeys gobbling in general? That's what I would really like to know.
Yeah, Facebook user, he said the bird numbers are down so bad and it's sickening. 15 years ago, I could go out at daylight and hear 7 to 15 birds gobbling. Now, if you hear one, it's a miracle. I can't say anything for that myself this year. Not been in the woods enough. But I will say 5 or 6 years, well, actually longer than that. It was probably about 10 years ago when I lived in Harlan. It was nothing to go outside, go up in the woods and hear 6, 7 birds. That was pretty normal, even on like an opening morning going out and hearing a bunch of birds. So, I mean, that was pretty normal for me back then. Pete, man, I really don't want to mess your name up. A heron? Pete, a hare? I'm not sure. Usually by this time in Virginia, we have birds hitting from daylight till 12, but ain't happened yet. Facebook user said that's in Muhlenberg County. Hey, be careful, man. You start mentioning Peabody WMA in here, people will get you. It already happened to me this past week. They'll get you, dude. Be careful.
Hey, Michael Powers was mentioned that he's covered 37 miles of walking so far this season. No luck yet, but have noticed gobblers getting a little bit more vocal. So that's good news in his area. And I hope you have some excellent luck, Michael. And I know, you know, that's putting in effort. You're walking that much and getting after it that much. That's putting in some serious effort. So good luck to you.
Oh yeah. Michael Powers also said poke salad fried in some bacon grease.
Nice.
And there, I will agree, man. Put some eggs, some bacon grease in there, that poke. I just ate and I'm already hungry.
Our fearless leader, John, stated that we have 686 turkeys harvested so far in Kentucky. We're halfway through. We were at 29,000 last year. I wrote a forecast for Eastern Outdoors Media for Kentucky. You know, I'll preface that by saying just for Kentucky, but our forecast was, according to our biologist, Zach Danks, that it was going to be right around last year's number or a little bit better, he anticipated. So we'll see where we are. You know, it's something we've talked about the last couple shows is we've talked a little bit about Jake harvest and it being increased. And I'll tell you the reason it's been increased, I think, and John put the number there in the comments, is we've killed 3,515 Jakes this year. That's above the last several years in harvest numbers. And the reason that is and something I'm actually very excited about, is I know we've talked about, we've had a few people say that the department's the way that they present their data or the way that they obtain their poult data is a little bit of, you know, I've heard one person say it's a joke. What I would like to say about that in this particular case is we've had a high number of Jakes harvested, higher number than normal, or at least the last couple of years. So what I want to say to that is Zach Danks, our biologist in Kentucky here for turkeys, he's our turkey coordinator. He mentioned to me that the 2021 harvest poult survival rate was a little bit better than recent years. He told me that 2020 was a little bit rough. That would indicate that we're not seeing a lot of 2-year-old gobblers this year. And as turkey hunters, we know that 2-year-old birds are the loudest. They're the most aggressive. They come into calling, they gobble and strut and drum and spit. They're active, and they're exciting to hunt.
This report, you got this report just before turkey season, right?
Yeah, this report came out just before turkey season. I wrote the report. So what it sounded like to me is we were going to experience kind of a rough, maybe lack of gobbling spring because we didn't have a great 2020 hatch. But he did tell me that the 2021 hatch was better than average to recent years. It's still, down, of course.
Still trending low overall.
It's still trending low overall, but we had a nice 2021 hatch, and that we would have a lot more jakes in the woods this year. Our harvest numbers kind of indicate that he might be correct on that. So that's a positive thing that I think we had a great hatch in 2021. I think that's a good thing. We still got work to do, of course. So it's not like it's better and all of a sudden it's fixed, but the harvest number for jakes, the increased harvest number would indicate that we had a good hatch in 2021. So I'm kind of excited about that. And that would also indicate that 2023 might be a little bit louder spring. We might experience as gobblers.
Yeah, a lot of people have been reporting, lots of jakes. I've seen several comments in here already. Like,
yeah,
man, there's not many. Like someone said, there was not many 2-year-olds, but there's a ton of jakes. I'm trying to find the comments here. There's already been several. I can't find it, but there have been several people that have mentioned, like, man, there's a ton of jakes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say. Actually, mine and John Allen's buddy Tom's Benden. He lives just across the Kentucky-Tennessee line in Tennessee, and he said he went hunting this morning, or maybe earlier last week. It was one of the two. He had 2 birds come in, both of them jakes. So, like, I'm consistently hearing, like, jakes, which is good.
Jakes gobble sometimes a lot.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, I guess what I'm trying to conclude from what you're talking about, specifically, Mike, is if we have a lot of jakes that have been killed, it indicates, that a lot of turkeys did survive in 2021, because of the number of jakes. But how do we account for the fact that people aren't hearing many turkeys gobble? From what you're saying, I'm concluding it's more weather-based or some other factor. It's not that the numbers are down necessarily. Or should we draw a different conclusion from that? I know we're just talking about Kentucky. It may not apply, to other eastern states.
Yeah. And then, we were talking about it a minute ago, some of the other states that we've heard that are also experiencing quieter springs. I do think it's the decrease in turkey population. I think that's a big part of it. I do think it's relative to the hatch, especially the 2-year-old hatch. So, again, the 2020 hatch was not very good. So that's going to indicate we don't have 2-year-old gobblers, and they're the gobblers that make the most noise. So, very easily we can kind of conclude that we're probably not going to hear a lot of gobbling this year due to that. Some of the older birds, in my forecast, I kind of highlighted we're going to have a lot of jakes, and we're probably going to have a lot of quieter, older birds. Yep. Bigger spurs, longer spurs, gobble a little bit, might be a little bit harder to kill, a little bit more stubborn, not as susceptible to calling and coming in, So I think we're experiencing that. But again, I do think, the main reason is probably some decline. Mississippi is another state that I know is experiencing what I would call a silent spring. They're experiencing the same thing. A lot of people that are in turkey hunting are familiar with Cuz Strickland or Ronnie Strickland.
Big time.
With Mossy Oak. He's got a wonderful podcast. Yeah. I love following his stuff. He's great, and he's a well-known turkey hunter in our community of hunting, and he's got a fistful. If you're not familiar with it, he's got a podcast called A Fistful of Dirt, and it's really good. I really enjoy just sitting talking, listen to Ronnie talk about turkeys, and he has good guests, and it's enjoyable. But he has said himself he's struggling to hear gobbles this year. So, he's a turkey master, and if a turkey master's saying that, we know that everyone's kind of going through the same thing.
Now, I talked to a friend of mine. He consistently hunts turkeys. He's more of a deer hunter, but he lives in Georgia near the coast.
Yeah.
And he says where he's at in Georgia, it's that thick. You got palmetto mixture, a lot of thick underbrush, swampy areas. He says those birds just don't gobble.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to account for that side of it, where it's just a certain group of turkey in a certain area, just maybe they're breeding more, and for whatever genetically they just don't hardly gobble. And there's all these factors, and I'm trying to nail down specifically how concerned we need to be, with nest survival, and what predators are having an effect on, how many turkeys are making it through and actually hatching and growing into a mature bird.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely need to get to the bottom. It's huge. It's a huge deal. Dr. Mike Chamberlain says that's definitely number 2 in his book of the cause for the decline. And his number 1 is habitat loss, or just habitat change in a negative way. And he said a lot of times what he's seen throughout the years is the change in our habitat across the Southeast has made it worse for turkeys, but better for predators. So habitat's number 1, and the turkey man, the turkey doctor, Mike Chamberlain. Habitat's number 1, predators number 2, and number 3. And he kind of put it into what you were talking about, John. Is he put it into the nesting predators as far as number 2, and then he actually talked about birds of prey as kind of number 3. So you got your owls, you got your hawks, and things of that nature for poults. But even owls, the great horned owl can swoop down and knock a turkey in the head and knock him out of a tree. They've got studies.
I listened to that, and that was wild. I had never heard that before.
Me neither. And so the great horned owl can swoop in, knock a turkey in the back of the head, make it fall out of the tree, and it kills it. And that's an adult. It can do that to an adult turkey.
Which is crazy. Clay Newcomb talked about that in the Bear Grease podcast recently. Yeah. There's been a lot of people talking about that. I don't think a lot of people knew that was a real thing.
Yeah, it's something that was new to me as well. I mean, you think of an owl, like why would an owl need to kill a big old turkey like that? And it's just, they swoop down, they come in at about 40 miles an hour, knock the sucker right in the back of the head, and it falls out of the tree and done. It's over. So it's just, that's amazing. And it's definitely something that we don't think about as turkey hunters, that's for sure. But so learning that, the top 3 things are habitat, nest predators number 2, and then your birds of prey is number 3, and disease. I think we can lump, a lot of people have theories of crops. Do the seed coatings have poison or something in them that's causing turkeys to get sick?
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Dr. Mike Chamberlain says that just disease in general, there's so many diseases, and turkeys get them so quickly and get sick so quickly, and are killed by other animals, and or they just die before they can get studied. We just don't know a lot about them, about the diseases that turkeys get and why they get them, and how it affects them. So, Josh, let's get to some comments.
Yeah, man. Bubba Buck Adventures. He said, "Where y'all from?" We're all from Kentucky, man. Me and John Allen were from Western Kentucky. Originally from John Allen's from. Where are you from?
I'm almost the same area that you are. I'm from Hyden, which is in Leslie County, is where I was born, Eastern Kentucky, and then I lived in Central Kentucky. I lived in Virginia, North Carolina. Now I'm Western Kentucky.
So he's a mountain boy just like me. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in Harlan, and then Mike's from Northern Kentucky. What is it? Independence?
Independence is the little city, but if you want to talk county, I'm in Kenton County.
Adam Short, got to pick some ramps and dry them up with all that. I need John because I clarify. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Adam. He usually can clarify it for me. He said again, gotta pick some. I'm okay, whatever. Joe Carter, I think turkey numbers are dangerously low. I think that's trending pretty much all throughout Kentucky. That's what everybody's saying. Bub Tackett, this week will be fire. Tell us why you think why this week is going to be fire.
Yeah, tell us, please.
Yeah.
I've seen you with all your turkeys and when you came on live with us, and I think he came on live with us and called, right? Bub did.
Yeah, absolutely did.
Bub came on and called with us, and I've seen all them spurs behind you. So I want to know why you think it's going to be fire this weekend. AJ Hamilton seen 4 the other night riding around public land with my daughters. Couldn't tell if they were hens or gobblers. Brandon Kloss, hey guys, there's a bunch of Jakes this year. I mean, one after the other. There's obviously a lot of Jakes going on, and we'll kind of talk about it here in a second, but I want to get through some of these comments. It does seem like, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not a biologist by any means, but I'm assuming, next year should be, if we have all these Jakes, next year should probably be a lot better, is what I'm assuming. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be, but that's definitely going to help get, more 2-year-olds and hopefully have another good hatch this year. I mean, we can always just hope for that. But
yeah,
Joe Carter, not many 2-year-olds. Bubtack at 2 years after a good hatch makes a great season. So there you go. Next year hopefully is going to be much better than what it is this year. Tim Fannin, I filled one tag the first day of season. They gobbled the first hour and a half of the day, then slowed down 1 to 2 times the rest of the day. Too many hens, in my opinion. In the comments, let us know, when are you hearing birds the most? Are you hearing them more in the morning, which is, for me, I would assume most people, me specifically, I always hear more gobblers in the morning time. I've never really even hunted the evenings too much. And then I know Mike, he's killed some birds in the evening. So let us know when you're hearing them the most and when you've harvested them. If you've killed a bird this year, let us know if you've killed in the evening time, morning time, right around noon. Let us know when you killed your turkey. Brandon Kloss, I haven't made a call, just using decoys. I killed 2. My cousin killed 1. They all came right to the Jake. That's kind of like your situation too, Mike. And I know you called some, but it was like, I think you called it deer hunting for turkeys, if I'm not mistaken.
Deer hunting for turkeys. And actually, you said that Pete got a little bit ago. Pete said that he refuses to deer hunt a bird personally. I know a lot of people that say that they do not like going out and sitting and waiting for a turkey. They want to chase that gobble. But what I'll say is I think, and here's what I want to say about that. When you, it kind of depends in a situation. If you're wanting to kill a turkey, a spring turkey, like, you'll do what you have to do. But what I'll say about the deer hunting a turkey is you kind of have to change your strategy as far as when there's no gobbling. When there's no gobbling, you don't know where to run to. So the run and gun is out of play at that point. Now, if you're hunting a huge place and you just want to run from field to field and fields to check and you just want to check them to see if there's a bird out there and he's strutting, not gobbling or anything like that, that's a little different. You can run and gun and do that. But if you're wanting to kill the bird and the run and gun style is just not there because you don't know where to go. They're not gobbling. It's been really quiet. If you want to kill a bird, that deer hunting style and waiting for them in an area where they spend time, you will eventually get a bird if you're patient enough. But it's not the style people want to do when they're turkey hunting. It's not the most fun thing to do. It really isn't. But if you
got turkeys on a trail cam and you see them coming into a strut zone or a field or whatever it is, consistently, at the end of the day, you want to kill a turkey more than you care about whether it's run or gun or deer and a turkey.
Yep.
I mean, that's the goal. Do what brings you success, right?
Absolutely. If you're looking to get one now, if you don't care, like if you're just like, I'm running gunning, if they're not gobbling, I'm going home. Like that's totally cool too. That's, it's whatever you want to do and however you like to hunt them. But if you're there and your mission is to kill a bird, you change your tactic immediately when one thing doesn't work and you're trying the next thing. But I thought that was a really interesting comment because I know a lot of people feel that way about kind of I just don't want to sit and wait for a bird. I totally get it because it is hard sometimes, especially if you've got one that's, somewhere where you think you can get to or whatever. And you're just like, I'm not sure if I should go bust through there. Do I try to find him? But because I was tempted. There was a couple of times where birds were gobbling close to me, and I'm just like, no, I'm going to wait and see what happens, and we'll see what happens. We did sit, Josh and John. We were with Hurley Combs and Lost Mountain Outfitters this weekend. down in Eastern Kentucky, and then my cousin got a bird, and again, they gobbled from maybe like 6 right at daylight. They gobbled a few times and then shut completely up the rest of the morning. I mean, nothing the rest of the morning. But we decided to go into a field. There was they were kind of gobbling down in a holler down below some real deep. I mean, they were deep in there, but we decided to go up on top of a ridge and sit down and call. We sat down and call, and all of a sudden he and I were just chatting back and forth, my cousin and I, and he looked over my shoulder. He was sitting in front of me. He looked behind me over my shoulder and he said, "Dude, there's 2 birds 60 yards strutting from you." And I just kind of peeked, and he was kind of like, "Don't move, don't move." But there was 2 birds, and actually there ended up being 3 gobblers and a couple hens way back. But those 2 birds just hung out and strut. They wouldn't come to my decoys because they had hens a little further away.
Okay.
But eventually what happened is another gobbler came in. Those 2 that were together ran him off. They were kind of chasing him. They were zigzagging through the field. They chased him off. That bird came behind us. So my cousin turned around and it came all the way in. The other 2 birds stayed a little further out. And we were trying to coordinate a little bit. We're whispering back and forth. And then he's like, "I've got a shot. My bird's really, really close. I need to get it done." And I said, "Hold on. I'm going to try to get a bird that's out in front." It's, I estimated about 50 yards probably. And I had a little bit of stuff in front of me, and he popped out into this little hole. And I said, "Okay." And I called really, really fast and kind of got all excited with my call and raised that turkey's head up. And I said, "Go ahead and shoot." He shot, I shot, and my birds flew off, and his fell and flopped around. So,
you always want to double when you can,
especially in that hunt. It was a really cool opportunity. Again, it was a deer hunt.
Yeah,
but it worked to a T, man. We sat down.
You got to do what you got to do. You
know? We sat down. We knew birds were in the area. We didn't know where they were because they were completely shut up. So we went in there. We sat down. We put decoys out, but we caught a little bit here and there. Hour later, a bunch of birds come in the field, and it was cool. It was an awesome hunt.
Adam Short, he clarified earlier what I was trying to read. He said ramps are an onion garlic flavored plant. The bulb looks similar to an onion bulb. Adam, I'm not going to lie. John Allen and Mike might know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't. I honestly have no idea what that is. I don't, but I'm definitely interested in what it is. Do you know what that is, John?
I mean, from what I understand, it's kind of like a wild onion,
just like a wild onion.
But I could be wrong. I thought I've heard people refer to a wild onion as ramp.
As a ramp, yeah. I'm very familiar. I found wild onions in the backyard. So
he may be talking about a very specific type.
Right, yeah.
I'm not sure.
He said they are wild, very popular in Harlan County. I'm from Harlan County. I should know that, right? Another Facebook user. I've seen 9 Jakes and heard of 6+ from other buddies. So, I mean, it just keeps trending, man. Jake after Jake.
I mean, we're hearing Jakes. Yeah. The tracks that I saw on public land were all young birds.
Yeah.
They were either, hens or they were Jakes.
Yeah. Another, we talked about Tennessee a little bit, Kentucky, and somebody mentioned Missouri. Jimmy Stevens, he's from Alabama. He said the Alabama population is way down here too. Been turkey hunting since 1972. Never seen it this bad. We've talked about it before. It's basically, I don't know if it's confirmed, but the whole southeast part of the United States it's on a decline. It is.
I think that's been confirmed at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's
scientifically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very touchy subject. Everybody loves their turkey hunting, and I get it. I love to turkey hunt too, but it is what it is, I mean.
I got a story to tell y'all real quick. I talked to a guy today. He's pretty involved in National Wildlife Turkey Federation. He's a Tennessee guy. He's tied in with some guys, and I believe it's the Tennessee Game Commission. They may call it something different. I know Kentucky, we call it, say, Game Commission or Commissioner. He heard from them that they did a recent study in Tennessee. They had 100 trail cameras out over turkey nest. This would have been for last year. 95 of those turkey nests, those eggs did not hatch. Yes. And they had a couple factors. They had predators coming in, nest predators, as we usually refer to them, possum, raccoon. They did have coyotes hit them as well, and then they had flooding. And so if you think about it, I would love to hear what people think. Is that average? I would think 95% of turkey nests failing to hatch eggs would not be average, but I don't really know. Maybe somebody that's listening right now might have some feedback on that. And that's just 1 year. We know like a heavy flood year and, lowland areas where you don't have a lot of high ridges, it could be very specific, but I'm curious for the people listening out there, if you've heard anything similar, if you've heard nesting predator increase causing, turkey eggs are not able to hatch, just what else people are hearing out there, or what Mike or what Josh, what you guys are hearing.
Yeah, it's something that Kentucky averages a poult per hen around, typically it kind of bounces back and forth between like 2.3 and 2.7. And they basically, from what I've read, I'm trying to remember some of the things that I've read in the past, that anything around 2 or below is not a real sustainable, poult per hen ratio. That's not good. I think Arkansas is one that really struggles bad with poult per hen. I know like Alabama is also one that's struggled in the past. I think Missouri struggled recently. Kentucky has stayed right in that mid 2.5, 2.4, 2.7 range, which is a little bit better than some of the other southern states.
What's the average number of eggs that a hen is going to lay in the East? Is there a number?
Yeah, usually it's about between 12 and 14, I think, is a typical nest will have in it. Something that I've recently learned through some podcast listening is a hen can actually store a gobbler sperm for quite a long time, which is why if one nest fails during the nesting period, if a nest fails early, she can go back and re-nest later.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild, and it's very, very interesting. Now, that might not be a great level of viable sperm later on, so it might get less. She might have a great fertilization in that first nesting period, and it might dissipate each time. But a hen can lay up to 3 or 4 different nests during the spring, depending on what happens to that first or second nest.
Okay.
And they can store a gobbler sperm for quite a long time during that springtime. So, you see a lot of, if anyone's seeing any birds that have super short beards, that's probably a hen's one of her last nests. If you got a Jake that's got a super short beard, maybe an inch or two, that's probably a hen, one of her last nesting sits or broods. That's probably one of her last broods that made it. If a bird's got such a short bird, that's probably a younger bird in that scenario. If you got a Jake that's got a 3 or 4 inch beard, he's probably an early spring hatch. So maybe he made it through that first brood or that first sit on the nest for that particular hen. But I've been reading a lot about it and listened to a lot of podcasts and biologists talk about it. It's been super interesting to learn.
Well, that 2.4, 2.7 number, is that the percentage that make it to a 1.5-year-old, like to a Jake? Like a 1-year-old turkey? What is that number representing? Because I would love to know also survival rates from Jake to Tom.
Yeah,
because they're not a lot less at that point. So what does that number represent? Do you know?
It just represents, probably, and I'd have to go back and look at some of the reports that they do in the summertime. That's where a lot of those reports come from, is like people observing the hens with the poults that they have. And like 1 week they might observe 5 poults with a hen, and then a couple weeks later they might observe that hen only has 1 left. Okay. So 5 might have hatched, but then as predation, and whether that be from the air or coyotes or even other quick little varmints that can grab a little poult in a scenario like that. So there's less. They kind of observe that. So that's that number that's early on. So it's like a poult that's just tiny. But then then deer hunting in the fall. You can kind of tell a bird that's a little smaller and younger, but they're
Absolutely.
old enough now that they can kind of handle themselves. They can get away. They can fly.
They can fly up on a limb or something.
Exactly. And I think a big key, we've talked a little bit about habitat. I would just say that if you have fields that you have to cut, maybe, this is a touchy subject with farmers because farmers have to do their work.
Right.
It's if it's farming season, if it's hay season, and you've got to make your money and you've got to do certain things a certain way. I totally get it. But what I would recommend is if you're a guy that's a farmer and also a hunter and you care about turkey numbers, I would, maybe consider waiting till about late June, early July to do any of that cutting, that mowing, that bush hogging, because what that does is if you hold off on doing that, you're protecting some of those poults that do hatch from birds of prey because they're able to scurry into some of those thicker, taller grasses in those scenarios, and even larger predators that are on foot, they can scurry through that thicker stuff because they're small. So I would just recommend that's one thing you can do habitat wise is literally do nothing. Literally let things grow up,
which is hard to do.
It is. It is.
It's all according, and we've talked about it before. I mean, we're not trying to tell anyone how to run their farm or their land or anything like that.
Yeah.
We understand farmers, they have a job, they have a way they have to,
certainly
they have to make their money too. It's their livelihood, how they're making their money. So we get that, but we're just talking, in general, that's a way you can help your habitat or your land if you're looking to see increases in turkey numbers and things like that. And that kind of goes right into, I'm trying to find it here.
On Fort Campbell, they rent out a lot of land to local farmers.
Yeah, they do.
Most farmers are doing a rotation, just like everybody else, corn, soybean. They do, some of those fields get rotated CRP, but there's a requirement, and I don't know what the numbers are specifically percentage wise, that they have to leave certain portions of the edge of those fields uncut. Whether it's soybean, whether it's corn, whether they let winter wheat grow up, whatever it is, they have to leave a certain edge to support that habitat. And even if 10% of the farmers out there like to turkey hunt in all of America, and I don't know what that number is, but a lot of farmers like to turkey hunt too. If they got on board, I wonder over time, give that 5, 6, 7 years, what kind of impact would that make? In improving turkey habitat in America.
Yeah.
That kind of rolls right in. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say I love that comment. I think I think it's a big deal, and I know we've got folks from different states and everything. I'm not familiar with all the different public lands and level of public lands versus private property in a lot of those states, but I know Kentucky's like 95% private property, maybe even more than that. It might be like closer to 97%.
It is a lot of property.
What I would say to that is it's you hear a lot of people, and we'll be brief on this conversation, but a lot of people kind of point to the department like, what are you doing? Like, what can you do? What you should be doing? What I would say to that is yes, we do need them to kind of spearhead some of those things and get that ball rolling and also educate. But if 97% of the property in Kentucky is private property, that means it's up to us. That means for the turkeys to survive, for turkeys to do better, it's up to private landowners, it's up to hunters, it's up to us as conservation, advocates to be involved, to educate ourselves, and to do things on our property that are going to benefit turkeys in a way that where we start seeing increases rather than decreases. And I think it starts with us. I can't stress that enough. It's important to me. I think it's important to all of us that care about turkeys and wild turkeys and hunting them and even seeing them and hearing them. Yeah. It's a big deal. And in Kentucky, if we're 97% private property, that means a lot of it's on us, and we're going to have to figure it out together.
Yeah. I agree, man. There's a lot that we can do as hunters that are going to help as well. And I can just think in my head, like we were kind of talking about on the podcast the other night, as hunters, like, if you're not seeing the results you want, we'll talk about, I know we've been kind of hammering on private land, but like public land, for instance, if you've been hunting the same spot for 5-6 years and you're seeing a decrease in the amount of gobbles or how often you're harvesting a turkey. I mean, maybe I know that the state limit is 2 birds per season, but maybe it's time, hey, I'm going to take 1 bird from this area rather than 2 this year.
Right.
And then I'm going to go somewhere else and hunt. And you probably, a lot of people are probably going to think, well, if I don't kill those 2 birds, somebody else is going to kill those birds. A lot of people probably think that way, and I get it, but you never know what they're thinking either. Like, what can we do as hunters there's so many different factors, we can predator hunt, we can look at the department and be like, hey, what are you doing to make the habitat better? There's a ton of different things. I think about this with bass fishing all the time. Like, I mean, it's the same way with bass eggs. Like, I read something, I pulled it up, and different articles have different things, but out of 2,000 to 7,000 eggs, and we're not going to get into fishing. I know John will be like, shut up, Josh. But
I love it, man.
Out of 2,000 to 7,000 bass eggs that are, on bed, right? So they go to bed, they lay their eggs, the females. Out of 2,000 to 7,000, 0.01 to 0.05 will make it to a 10-inch bass. So we're not just talking about like a bluegill coming in and raiding the nest. We're talking like they hatch to like a little bitty one, and they're trying to make it on their own, and they get eaten by probably their own mom. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's some things you can't help. I mean, It's easy to point fingers and things like that, but
yeah,
we really need to look at ourselves too. Like, what can we do differently to help? And it's honestly, it's got to be a group thing. Just one person is not going to make a difference. We got to get a bunch of people on the same page with the same goals. And that's really hard to do. But if we love the outdoors, it's what we got to do. It's exactly what we have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, you mentioned bass and bluegill. I took my son fishing literally right before we came on live. We have a little pond in the neighborhood, and I actually witnessed bluegill coming in. I think I was around a bass nest because 2 bass were hanging around, and bluegill were kind of coming in. We were fishing with hot dogs, and bluegill were coming up to the hot dogs and starting to chow down. Yeah. But we were so close to a bass nest. I think anytime those bluegill came in, those bass were hitting them things like missiles, dude. It was wild. Like, I sort of wish I would have stopped fishing. I was kind of having fun with him because we were catching this bluegill, but we actually did catch one of the bass, and it ended up hitting that hot dog as soon as it hit the water. But we were kind of fishing for the bluegill. But really nice. I think I sent you guys a picture. Anyway, those bass were coming at those bluegill like missiles. I mean, they weren't leaving them alone. It was wild. I should have videoed it.
They will, man. And maybe I'm giving some secret. Well, it's not a secret, but people probably don't want people to throw it because they want to catch them. But hey, bluegill is a great thing to throw this time of year. Throw it in the middle of the bed.
Good color.
Biggest bass I ever caught, 7-pounder, was on a live bluegill.
Wow.
See, the bluegill's the way to go. It really is.
Yeah.
I caught a bluegill with my son. We were fishing together. I pulled the bluegill out of the water, and as the bluegill is just coming out of the surface of the water, we see this massive bass literally try to swallow the bluegill and just misses. Wow. And my son at the time, I think he was 5. He's like, "Dad, why don't we put the bluegill on the hook and try to catch that bass?" And I'm like, "You're a genius. I've been doing this for years. Why am I not thinking about this? Let's do it." So we throw it on there, and
sure enough,
next thing you know, that bass just hammers it. Ends up being 7 pounds. I was like, "Hey, the wisdom of a 5-year-old."
And the student becomes the teacher.
Well, hey, we're going back to turkey hunting, Mike. I know we're talking about at the beginning how to hunt henned up gobblers.
Yeah.
And I know a little bit of that has to do with how you call. I'm not a super experienced caller, but I know you are. Josh, feel free to chime in here on any of this call stuff because you might know better than me. But when it comes to the different calls, I've got some calls with me. I've got a box call.
Yeah.
I've got my brand new glass call. We've got some diaphragm calls from Esh, and I want to know what's some of the best ways to try to call to these henned up gobblers. You got any advice?
Yeah, actually, Bub Tackett was saying, I kind of want to tie that comment in because it kind of stuck out to me. He was saying that this week's going to be on fire, or this weekend's going to be on fire. And I think where he was going with that, I don't know if he ended up commenting again But I think where he was going with that is like in Kentucky, we're getting super close to that time where the hens are really going to start nesting now. It's already happening a little bit, I think, but now it's going to happen more and more as we get later into our turkey season. And what happens is instead of those hens flying down and the gobbler gobbling and her going to that gobbler and tying him up, what's going to happen is she's going to fly down, and they might be together, but she's going to fly down, maybe hang out with him for just a very short time, and then she's going to break and go to that nest, which means earlier in the day. So it won't be any longer. It won't be that 10 to noon. I mean, you'll still have an opportunity from 10 to noon, not saying you won't. But instead of it being 10 to noon when he leaves that group of hens like early in the season, he might leave that hen at like, or she might leave him at like that 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning hour. And that's when that gobbler's going to get fired up because that hen's gone. Other hens are nesting. There's less hens being receptive to mating. So he's going to gobble more. Those gobblers are going to be gobbling more. So now what I would do with those calls is especially if you find one that is a little bit more vocal, that means you can be a little bit more vocal. So you can kind of play with each one, especially if it's a windier day. You've got your slate call, your friction calls. You've got your box calls that can kind of reach out and touch them a little bit.
Yep.
So, in those specific situations,
you're going to hit a box call.
Yeah.
Are you going to? I mean, how are you just hitting a yelp with that raspy end, or are you hitting like what? How are you hitting that? What are you recommending?
Yeah. So a lot of things that I like to do is I'll kind of mix in a little bit of both, especially if you got a bird that's really going. You can kind of mix in some. I call it chopping. You can mix in some of those chops, some of those real quick clucks and chops in there, little quick cuts. And then just a heavy, aggressive yelping.
Okay.
Yeah. So
PK said that long beard I shot opening weekend, he was gobbling, but not to my calls. The boss hen was answering my calls, and that's what was triggering the tom. So I went back and forth with the hen.
Yep.
Just pissing her off until they pitched.
Good tactic.
They pitched into my setup and kaboom. So, I'm kind of like PK saying that, and Mike made a good point. It's kind of like reading a person. Like, if they're more vocal, you be more vocal. And that's, I'm not nearly as experienced as maybe PK or Mike, and I'm really bad. I just let them have it, John. If I hear one gobble, I'm going to town. I can't help it. I just let them have it. And then I'm like, it's either going to happen or it's not. So I just go.
Are you hitting them with the diaphragm call? What are you hitting them with?
Dude, I've got an Esh call. I love this glass call. Really nice glass call. I've got a box call around here somewhere. And then I have the same mouth call actually you have right here.
I think this is.
That's all I use. That's all I use.
For young hen. Yeah.
So Brandon Kloss said right there, I call very little. So, excuse me. It's very obvious. Like being patient, like Billy Barnett came on. Mike's talked about it. Brandon's talking about it just now. Like being patient is key. I'm not very good at it. I'm not. I get way too excited, but patience is definitely it's hard to come by. I'm not very patient.
Well, I'll tell you, Josh, with the patience really quickly, it's relative to this season. It's specific to this season of no gobbling, the silent spring, if you will. That's where the patience comes in. That's where the tactic of sitting and waiting and calling here and there and being every 30 to 40 minutes and getting in a strut zone and hoping one shows up. This season specifically, just by the evidence of the comments in here, some of our own experiences and some of the experiences in the other states as well, I really think that's been the tactic and that's kind of been the approach that's been successful this year. Not saying that any run and gunning is not, because I've heard people talk about running and gunning as well and being just as successful. But I think that's been a specific tactic for this season. Patience is key.
Yeah.
So is that changing though? Is that changing towards the end here?
Yes, I believe in Kentucky, and I can't speak for the other states that I don't hunt in, but with like we were talking about a few minutes ago, I think we're going to start seeing more hens going to that nest, and gobblers are going to still be ready. The gobblers are still, their testosterone's still going. So when that hen's not receptive anymore, they're starting to branch off and go to nest. That's less hens willing to breed. If you're that hen and you're in his zone, you got a shot. And I think that's going to start happening here in the last couple of weeks of the season.
So speaking of being in his zone and trying to be a hen, for those out there that are like me, you use a diaphragm call. You maybe aren't always sure what this diaphragm call is supposed to be sounding like. We kind of talked about this before we came on live, Mike.
Yeah.
Some of the words that we're trying to say with our mouth in English, but we're actually making a different sound with this call. You know, I've heard of people saying a pot pot or a polk polk.
Yep.
Heard saying a key key and a choke choke. You know, what do you recommend to me to say on this to get the sounds that I want?
Yeah, you know, some of my go-tos are very simple. I try to make a putt 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 sound with my it's very simple. It's easy for me to work. Yeah,
something like that.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So that's great for when you're trying to cluck. It's great for when you're trying to start off a cut. At least for me, you know, and mouth calls can be tricky because everybody has a different shaped mouth. So, and a mouth call might fit differently.
You might have to cut this to shape, you know, for your mouth. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it can be a little different for everyone, but I've, you know, pushing that air through saying like, put, that can kind of get those yelps going. I can also go, put. So if I'm just kind of clucking, I don't know how many times I've been able to get a gobbler to kind of get excited off that alone.
Yeah. In the comment section there,
is that what you're talking about, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
In the comments, let us know like what
what should we be saying?
I think we have a lot of people in here that do use mouth calls quite a bit. What advice would you John, I think you're pretty I wouldn't say you're novice or anything like that, but you're pretty new to using mouth calls, correct?
Yeah, I mean I've been playing with them for probably 15 years, but actually trying to nail down the science of what am I trying to get out of these calls, I would say I'm pretty new to them.
Yeah, I'm trying to get mine broken in here a little bit. For me, man, I honestly, what I like to do, and I still do it to this day, my buddy Eric, he can sound like, I think he sounds better than a real hen. I mean, it's almost dumb to say that, but like he sounds amazing. And he kind of got me into using mouth calls. I would get on YouTube and I would just try to sound exactly what that hen sounds like. I know a lot of people like for yelping, they'll yelp, 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 yelp. But I think it's kind of just, you know, what you develop over the years of kind of just what works for you. Like for cutting, you know, I use that quick, just like pop, 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 pop.
So
pop.
you're saying with your mouth, pop, 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 right?
I'm saying more of like, maybe it sounds a little weird, but I say more like cut, cut, cut.
Cut. Okay.
I don't know. That works for me. That may not work for everybody. And when I yelp, I don't know what. Let me see.
So I say choke, choke, choke. Sometimes I'm curious.
Yeah, you know, and some just to get some yelps out. I like even saying tisk tisk tisk, like just because it's a natural because that's kind of what you're doing with your tongue when you're trying to blow air between the roof of your mouth and the. Yeah.
In my mind, I was saying tisk, 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 tisk.
Yeah. What that naturally does, especially if you're trying to cut and you're trying to cut fast, that gets your tongue moving. That gets your tongue tick, 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 tick. So it kind of helps with that.
I could feel the difference actually trying to speed it up a little bit.
Yeah.
It was easier saying tisk, tisk, tisk and saying like a poke, poke, poke where I'm trying to put my lips together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I like you know, I played trumpet when I was in middle school and high school. And I like using mouth calls to kind of playing an instrument. You can do different things like it's called double tongue for trying to play an instrument. Like you go tugga 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 when you're playing an instrument. If you're doing that, you're playing multiple notes very quickly. So that's kind of the same principle when you're blowing a mouth call. It's the same. I try to use that same principle. So like tugga 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 or tisk 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 tisk, trying to get those cuts going.
Nice.
Yeah. See, Brandon Klossy said I say chalk. I don't know if he's talking about.
I've heard that. Let me try chalk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm literally saying chalk, 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 chalk in my
Absolutely.
mouth to get that sound. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect.
Sounds good.
I honestly don't. I'm not even thinking in my head what I'm saying. I guess I'm saying yelp. Just yelp, 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 yelp.
Does
yelp.
anybody say key, key, key or cat, cat, cat? I've heard people say that before.
Adam Lewis says, keep a call with you in the woods during deer season and mimic the hens when you hear them. That's great advice.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll call in call in some birds to you and get you a fall bird. I actually seen a while ago somebody asked, and I won't comment on it too much because I really don't know the answer to this, but they said, do you think the upcoming seasons would benefit from taking away the fall turkey season? What do y'all think about that?
Well, I'm sure it would benefit in some ways. It's just such a tradition, associated with Thanksgiving. I mean, I guess there was a while where we didn't have enough turkeys where you could even have that tradition, but nostalgia kicks in, your American pride if you want to be able to kill a turkey because of the Thanksgiving time frame. But I think we can look past that if we need to get the turkey numbers up. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Honestly, man, like I said, I don't know too much about it. I would assume it would help. I don't know. Like you hear in deer season, if you're not seeing a lot of bucks and you have a ton of does on your property, you might need to thin out some does, right? So I know during fall season, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while since I've tried to hunt for a turkey during the fall. You can kill a hen in the fall, right?
Yeah, correct? You can. I think, and actually, forgive me, I'm so busy deer hunting that I actually typically do not fall turkey hunt, but I believe you get 4 total tags as a fall turkey hunter. I think you get 2 gobblers and 2 hens, if I'm not mistaken on that.
Yeah,
that's a very rough. That's
but
a very
it's a real short season. I mean,
does anybody know? I'm sure somebody in here knows what is the limit for fall season. Is it two gobblers, 2 hens? What is the limit there? And honestly, I don't know. Maybe, like I was saying, like deer season, if you thin out the does, you're going to have more, bigger bucks come through.
Yeah.
Maybe if we take away fall season, there's going to be less birds killed in the fall, and that's going to help us out in the spring. I really don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, last fall, I think we harvested roughly 1,500 birds, and most of those, I'd say, I think I read it was somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200. Very, very that's very rough. But I think we harvested, those were all about hens. Most of those fall harvests were hens. The shotgun season's a week long, but you can also harvest turkeys with, about the time deer season rolls around, you can start shooting fall turkeys with, bow. So there's a lot of archery harvests, while people are deer hunting, if a turkey comes up, you got your sportsman's license or you've purchased your fall turkey tags, you can shoot a hen with your bow while you're deer hunting. So
right.
It's again, 1,500 birds doesn't sound like a lot, and 1,000 hens doesn't sound like a lot, but if a hen that's, let's just go by, we'll say 1,000, and we'll go by a situation where we'll just say 2.0, two poults per hen.
Right.
That's 2,000 birds. So you're taking out 2,000 birds essentially, if you want to think of it that way. So that's kind of a lot. That's quite a few.
Hey Eddie, how you doing, man? Well, guys, we've been rolling for about an hour. It's been like an hour and 3 minutes. We've been rolling for a bit. It's past 9 o'clock. I know my youngin he's waiting on me. We'll close out with the rest of these comments. We were talking about, the fall season. Brandon Kloss, he said, get rid of fall season. Adam Lewis, cut out the hens from fall season. Killing hens is a bad idea. Russell Waters, I'm not sure. Hopefully I said that right. He said it's 4 hens. Let's see. Yeah, 4 turkeys in the fall, what Brandon said. In the past years, you can only shoot 1 mature tom in the fall. PK said, let's keep going.
Yeah, he's been killing lots of turkeys. He's on a run, man.
Yep. Rodney B, 4 birds total, 2 bearded birds, but only 1 mature gobbler, I believe. And then PK laughing. He said he's got to wake up at 4 for work. So guys, hey, thanks for coming on. Kind of to wrap it up, just be thinking like, what can you do as hunters to make the turkey woods better? Like what can you do the rest of this year and next year? And same thing for deer season. What can you do as a hunter to increase your harvest for the following years? Because obviously I want to do this for the rest of my life. Hopefully I've got 80 years left. I don't see that happening, but
I want my kids to do it too.
Yeah, we want our kids to do it. So thanks for joining us tonight. Good luck the rest of this week and this coming weekend. And hopefully y'all get some birds, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Enjoyed it, guys. Thanks.
See y'all.
See you, fellas.